Hopefully my remote works all the way over here. If it didn't. So my name is Joe Stump. I'm the CTO and co-founder of SimpleGeo. Who here doesn't know what SimpleGeo does? And it's fine if you don't. Awesome. A whole bunch of prospective new clients just raised their hands. So SimpleGeo basically started out as a company that was creating location-based games. And basically we wanted to create these games. Actually our first prototype was very similar to My Town, where we wanted to have like an alternate reality Monopoly built on top of the real world, where people would go around claiming basically different parts of their cities and then selling them on the market or defending them or whatever. And one of the things that I realized, you know, I often tell people that like scaling infrastructure is very much like seeing a horror movie. Like once you see it, you can't unsee it. So everywhere you go, there's like, you know, problems that are all over the place. So when I initially started out and I was playing around with location services and things that were available at the time as far as the location toolchain went, there were essentially three options. ArcGIS, which was created by a company called Esri in the United States that was founded by a man named Jack Dangermond, who literally created and invented the term geographic information systems. The company's 40 years old. It's a very old, static tool, costs ridiculous amounts of money, us poor startups can't afford. There's Oracle Spatial, which not a lot of people know about, but actually powers Garmin Connect. It has Oracle in the name, therefore the default price tag is somewhere in the 7-figure range. And then there's PostGIS, which is probably the most popular that most people are used to playing around with. And the problem with scaling relational database systems is that they suck really bad for scaling. They're really bad with write throughput. I have a friend who works at a company that is quote unquote scaling PostGIS with $250,000 database servers. And so basically there weren't options out there. So I started creating my own, built it on top of Cassandra, and we were going along the ways. And all of a sudden we had this really interesting tool that we had created that was actually more interesting than the games themselves. So hence SimpleGeo was born. You can think of it as basically S3 for location-based services kind of thing. So I'm sure most people have heard this term before, content is king. I would argue under circumstances as we move forward, content is actually no longer going to be king. One of the interesting things as of recently, you know, during 1.0, there was basically this big land rush where people were taking all of the old dead tree content that we had laying around and throwing it up on the web. Lo and behold, there actually wasn't a lot of content at the end of the day. The Library of Congress only has something like 200 terabytes of data, which really at the end of the day isn't a whole lot of data. And then during Web 2.0, we had this really bright idea that we'd hand over content creation to the masses, right? And lo and behold, people create a lot of shit. You guys are producing billions of photos. I think I read a stat recently that the average American, or not the average American, I'm sorry, 11% of Americans have over 10,000 digital photos in their photo library. The largest Flickr photos have millions of photos uploaded. And what's interestingly happened after this is that data creation and production is now following Moore's Law. We're doubling the amount of data that we create every 18 months, which is a very scary statistic for guys like myself and Tom who have to store it all. So, really interesting thought now that we're heading into background location and we're basically following people around and whatnot is this question that kept popping up when I was building the infrastructure for what was called CrashCorp, the gaming company, was what happens if we track where everyone goes and everything that they do? Just think about that for a second. So I ran a little bit of math here. So if you just kept track of lat, lon, timestamp, and user ID for the 500 million active Facebook users, and keep in mind that's only 1/14 or something of the world's population, and they updated their location every 30 seconds, 24 hours a day. That's 37.2 gigabytes of data per minute. 1.6 petabytes per year. $128,000 a month to sort on S3. So basically, the production of data, because of real time and because of what we're about to be doing, which is essentially tracking where everyone goes and what everyone is doing, we've got a really interesting technical problem on our hand. People wonder, of course, why Twitter has trouble scaling. When you put it in that context of something, I think Twitter has 1/5 the users, so you're looking at 6 gigabytes a minute. I think I saw my friend Ryan King, who works on the Cassandra storage team, said that they're doing, I think, 7 terabytes of data a day or something like that. It's ridiculous. So what's basically been happening is, obviously, simple supply and demand go into effect here. As the production of data increases, the value of that data decreases. So what I would like to propose, and what I feel that location is an interesting new input on, is that content is actually no longer king. Context is king. Basically, the value of your data sets are going to become worthless over time, and that the way that you are going to extract value out of your data moving forward is through metadata and flows of data. In other words, context. For instance, if you think about it, Google and Bing search both pay tens of millions of dollars per year for access to the Twitter hose. They don't pay tens of millions of dollars a year for access to the entire corpus of tweets. They pay that money for access to the real-time hose. So another interesting thing to think about when it comes to location is that Apple's produced something around 50 million iPhones. There's probably at least that many Android handsets out there now. And each iPhone 3GS has 6 sensors. There's a camera, there's a proximity sensor, there's a light sensor, GPS, accelerometer, and compass, right? So if you can take those other 5 sensors and tie them to location, what kind of interesting experiences can you create from those? And what we've kind of inadvertently done as a population and as a people is we've inadvertently created one of the largest moving, self-healing sensor networks that's ever been created. I think some other interesting sensors that I would like to see in phones moving forward, it would be really interesting if we could measure weather, for instance. Can we get a thermometer in the phone? What other types of sensors can we figure out that would be interesting? There's also Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. You can probably count those as sensors as well. And there are people that are actually using the sensors on the iPhone and creating basically large real-time self-healing networks. So one of the kind of best-kept secrets, I think, on the iPhone is that the location infrastructure, the thing that actually tells you, the developer, or you, the user, where you're currently standing, is powered by a company called Skyhook Wireless. Skyhook Wireless started in the early 2000s by war driving around, looking for Wi-Fi hotspots and then geotagging them. And they do Wi-Fi triangulation based on Wi-Fi access points. So that's how, obviously GPS doesn't work indoors, but that's how your iPhone knows that you're sitting on this corner of the building rather than on that corner of the building. And once the iPhone came out, Skyhook Wireless is no longer war driving because they get 300 million pingbacks a day from iPhones. So your iPhone now is a war driving machine. And I recently found out that I think Motorola or HTT is also switching Android over to Skyhook Wireless as well. So they're probably going to be getting more in the order of 500 or 600 million pingbacks a day. So what Skyhook essentially has enabled themselves to do is they now have this giant self-healing network that keeps track of hundreds and millions